top level journalism. This is the apex. You don't get people that have the integrity of Steve Gruber in journalism anymore. It comes from years of beating the pavement, working hard, breaking top stories. He's up every day at 6 in the morning. I believe it starts at 6 a.m. Eastern, and then he does another show at 4 p.m. Eastern, Real America's Voice Live. He's unstoppable. The one, the only Steve Gruber. Welcome to the Golden Age.
Hey, Jake, how are you tonight?
I'm so good. God bless you, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Man, it's a lot going on in there.
Between the social problems in America and then the ultimate victories of President Trump's administration, you have so much to cover. And as patriots, as newscasters, I don't think there's a dull moment in our lives. Steve, what a turn of events, though, in our personal relationship. You're on my show. It's amazing.
Yeah, imagine that. For that long period of time that you were incarcerated, you had, I believe it was an iPad, right? That's how you would connect to the world outside.
It depended.
And you would come on, and sometimes you weren't there, and sometimes you were. Usually you were there. But, you're inside the block there. You can't just pick up the phone or jump in front of the camera and make it happen. Sometimes you're at the whim of whatever they had going on, right?
Yeah, there's been so many times where we had an interview scheduled, right? And then all of a sudden I would get transferred to like 1,000 miles away to some basement in some gulag in Brooklyn, New York, or federal penitentiary and in it was a Lancaster, PA. And so, they knew the impact that you had, particularly your program. One way you can measure a show and the veracity of the audience and the size of the audience and the care of the Patriots is when we would do the plugs for like J6 Legal Fund or something like that. And I would turn, to my people that are managing that stuff, and I'd be like, how'd we do after the hit? And every single time your audience, Steve, was so generous and so loving. So I know that you're the real deal. People, when you speak, they listen.
Well, I appreciate that. You talk about, they call it new media now. I don't know if it's new media or not. Look, I worked for NBC News back in the day. I worked for local affiliates, and I was actually the weatherman once way long ago. I had some really cool parted down the middle hair way back in the day. That's where I kind of started radio and television. But I went on and I worked for WCMH in Columbus, Ohio, owned and operated by NBC News. I got to do some things. I met George W. Bush then, and I went to the Space Center and watched STS-95, which was a space shuttle that took John Glenn into space. And so we had all this access. But the world is different now. There was a book, I tell people this, there was a book that I signed when I was hired by NBC, and my checks came from 30 Rock, so I was an employee of NBC, and it was a 3-ring binder. It was about yay thick, right? About this thick. And it was do's and don'ts. And about this much of it was don't, and about this much of it was this is what you're allowed to do, right? If we did any of the things that they do on MSNBC today or NBC News or a lot of these other places, we'd have been fired, and rightfully so. Look, these people are clowns. They're not serious journalists. When you've got the Washington Post and New York Times, another example, that are hanging on to Pulitzer Prizes that they won for stories that were completely fabricated and completely false and not based on any factual evidence, that being the Russia hoax, and they won't give the prizes back? Oh, we did good reporting on a fake story, on a story that wasn't even real. And you think you win the Pulitzer Prize, which, heretofore had been a pinnacle of success and due diligence and do your work and earn this thing. Bah.
Now there's
garbage.
Just virtue signal trophies. Who can cover, transgender frogs in Malaysia and the impact it has on the socioeconomic status of, binary whales in Alaska? It's crazy. The stuff that they have, they have spoon-fed us and called this journalism. But I want to thank you for your veracity covering the January Sixers. Let's talk about it a little bit, because you've been here since the beginning. Real America's Voice and my friend Rob Siggs and all the amazing Grant Stinchfield, even though we had quite the interesting exchange last time I was on a show. But the Real America's Voice team has been by our side the entire time. What do you think the next steps are for the January 6th movement? Are we done? Is it done until we get restitution? Is it done until we are brought to the White House and the government kind of officially apologizes and says, you guys were right for standing up? Is the election integrity of 2020, the investigation, going to completely vindicate us? I know I packed a lot into there, but a lot
A
of
lot to
people think
unpack, but let me just start with the
Jan
one
6
thing at a
is
time.
over.
I mean, and here's the thing. You know, I see a headline crossing the wire here just moments ago. Another federal judge taking on the Trump administration, this time allowing the people that have been targeted by the Alien Enemies Act and deported out of this country, they can now file a class action lawsuit, so says this federal judge, a federal district judge. Let's see, this is Judge Fernando Rodriguez, appointed by Trump during his first term, issued a 12-page order on Thursday granting a group of petitioners class certifications. They can file a class action lawsuit against the United States government. So what I'm getting at here is that January the 6th is not the fire of the day. The fire of the day is in about 25 courtrooms a day where these federal district judges are completely out of their lane, completely out of their element. And I've used this example, and it seems to resonate with people, so I keep using this example. If a federal district judge comes in and issues a moratorium on whatever the act is. Maybe it's throwing illegals out. Maybe it's a refusal of the federal government to pay Harvard to teach kids to hate white people and Jewish people. Whatever it is. And so they do this across the board order. Can you imagine a guy walking into the Oval Office and saying, Mr. President, a judge in Maryland, a federal district judge in Maryland, has now issued an injunction shutting down your Emancipation Proclamation. Think about it. That's what we're talking about here, is that these federal district judges are coming in and dictating policy, whether it's immigration policy, how we handle January the 6th, how we handle financing and Title IX, all of these things. These federal judges, the activist judges, now think they have the right to impact every single decision. I mean, there's a judge, a federal district judge in Louisiana that issued the ruling on federal payments to the Ivy League schools. Last time I checked, Ivy League schools were not in Louisiana. They were a long way from there. You see, this judge shopping nonsense is twisting America. This is what the left has left. So I don't know if you get your day in court. I don't know if you get your fair shake. I don't know if the people that were jammed up on January the 6th, or other people that are jammed up for, being outside of abortion clinics, or a host of other things. And these people got arrested and jammed up by the liberal, left-wing, socialist, communist, globalist governments who, I mean, you look at what's happening you think we've got it bad. If we don't keep our act together, it's going to get worse. You look what's going on in the UK and elsewhere, where if you post the wrong meme on your social media site, they'll pound on your door at 3 a.m, handcuff you, and go throw you in jail for a few months.
They're trying to do that in Texas.
I saw that. That'll never fly there either.
Thank God.
Texas, sometimes I just look at it and go, what the hell are you doing? Honestly, what the hell are you doing? Wake up. Nobody wants to. And here's the other thing about all of this. January 6ers, you're kind of a split decision. I'm not quite sure how the country feels any given day, right? But I know on sending out members of Tren de Aragua or MS-13, that's an 80-20 split, a 90-10 split. That's not even close. Taking children and mutilating them in the pursuit of another gender, it's not even close. 80% of the country is totally against that ridiculous behavior. You guys have, and we still can't seem to get wins in court. So for you guys, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, Jake. It's an uphill climb. You've got a lot of obstacles in front of you because you've got activist judges. Can you get a fair shake in court? Can you get to where you need to be? I don't know.
Well, we've seen, obviously, with the activist judges in January 6th, but in a broader sense, the legislation from the bench, the lawmaking and the ruling from the bench, striking down laws, nullifying laws, trying to block executive orders. And it's really
one after another.
One after another. And it's not just a Donald Trump thing. They've been doing this for a very long time. These federal judges, lifetime appointees, many of them. What has happened is a similar thing in another community we talk about a lot here, is that they're not being punished for their malfeasance. And when federal judges not only get arrested, but we're talking about mass impeachments, deposing them of their power, getting these people with their bar licenses revoked. This is the type of action when we start to put kind of guardrails around the judicial branch of our government and let them know our Congress members and our Senate members are not going to be stagnant and just sit by and watch this
Well, I
happen.
hope not.
It's well,
Because right now you have to wonder. You look at some of these members of Congress, and this is a feed, so I can say this. Why don't you get off your dead asses and do your job? And that means impeach these rogue judges, hold them to account if they're beyond, the scope. Look, a district judge, a federal district judge, that's basically a local judge. You have your district. You don't get to dictate policy on immigration or J6 or finance or Title IX across the freaking country. That's not how it works. You want to issue an injunction for Louisiana, fine, do that. Or San Francisco, okay, do that. It'll get thrown out in court later, potentially, or maybe it won't. But you can't issue an injunction for the entire country. And I'm going to tell you this. Either the Supreme Court gets this right or the Republicans in Congress get this right, or we're really in trouble here. And I mean significantly in trouble, like forever in trouble. They've got to get their act together, get off their dead asses, do their job. A couple of these judges need to be impeached. I mean, you look at how the left was screaming when this judge was arrested in Milwaukee, for example. She was shepherding an illegal alien out the side door so that he wouldn't get arrested. Well, she's now been basically been taken out of her courtroom by the left-leaning Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin. What she did was so egregious and so she was flouting the law. And she was so far afield, they said, you're out. You can't hear you're done. You're out until further notice if you ever come back. The two down there in New Mexico was told can never practice law again, can never be a judge again. And, but leading up to those decisions, those on the left and those at MSNBC and Chicken Noodle News and all these other places, they're fighting. The Trump's throwing judges in jail. It's a constitutional crisis. No, they committed a damn felony. Pretty simple. And let me tell you something else about this whole due process thing. Did you ever get much due process? I'll get back to that in a second. But here's my point that I'm making. They're always talking about due process for illegal aliens. When your first act of being in this country is breaking the law, there's a reason the term is illegal alien. And that is the legal term. Illegal alien, not undocumented immigrant, not newcomer. It's illegal alien.
Dreamer.
Yeah, dreamer. Yeah. Here's the thing. What part did they not understand? You broke the law to get here. First act. You get picked up and thrown. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing a judge just issued. You can't arrest an illegal alien unless you have a warrant. What are you talking about? If you run into somebody, you realize they're an illegal alien, that's a violation of the law. You arrest them. I mean, do you have to have a warrant now if somebody's got they're speeding down the road? Well, you don't have to warrant to pull that person over and give them a ticket. You see somebody sidestripe somebody or whatever. You're right. Come on. If somebody's there and they're an illegal alien for whatever reason, maybe they're in a gang, maybe they're not in a gang, whatever. You don't need a warrant to arrest somebody that has broken the law, period.
It's one of these messes, right, that it's going to take, like I said, our legislative branch has been so feckless and jellyfish-like in the face of this judicial tyranny for so long. They're running rampant and drunk with power. They are drunk with power like sailors spending money at a bar on payday. And that's what these judicial judges are doing. That's what these people, they're legislating from the bench. And that is one of the fundamental separation of power, egregious violations that our founding fathers warned us about, Steve. And so I seen the activist judges that not only were just doing things like setting illegal aliens free, that's one type of egregious act, but how about throwing American heroes like Joe Biggs, double Purple Heart, award-winning veteran, 2 or 3 tours in Afghanistan, away for 17 years in prison. It's one thing to let some guy that hopped the border walk free out of the side of your court. It's another thing to take American heroes, patriots, people that weren't even at the Capitol, like Enrique Tarrio, Stuart Rhodes, and throw them in prison for decades. And that is they think
and in
they
prison
have
for
so
what?
much. They think there's so much, leniency in their power because they've never been checked. Where is the check and balance? The check is like, I need a hockey check out of the judicial branch. I want the legislative branch, one of these guys, the court meisters here sitting around, and I want a full-blown hockey check and blast these guys into the glass wall so that they get taught a lesson. That way, it's the same way in hockey. That's why they do that, because the next time you're going to think there's somebody coming off my right or my left, and you're going to be a little more aware. Until we put a little bit of elbow grease on the judicial branch of government, they're going to continue to ramp it with power.
I think that's exactly true. I think that until you make an example of some of these rogue judges, and they are rogue. They have run far afield of their jurisdiction, and it's judge shopping. Look, the Democrats know the inside of the courtrooms much better. Now, I give credit to the Trump administration. They were prepared for it this time. They saw it coming. They knew what was going to happen. They were going to get challenging court on just about everything, and they've had a series of wins so far, and they're going to have more. I can assure you on that. More wins are coming. It's just a matter of, the courtrooms, like it or hate it, unless you can get an expedited hearing, it's a process. You know that. It's a process. It takes time. Now, in your case, in J6ers, that was crap. That was a different deal. But even in the normal circumstances, it takes time for these things to get through. It doesn't take 4 years. That's absolutely inconceivable and unforgivable. And no trial. It's inconceivable. I know that. And you had charges. You never went to trial. In 4 years' time, you are entitled to a speedy trial in America. That is right here in this Constitution that sits right. I mean, I've got copies of these things everywhere. And the right to a speedy trial is here.
Put some muscle behind it, Steve.
That's right. We have to make it valuable. And look, that's true of the entire Constitution. And that's why it's important that we defend the freedom of speech, the freedom of keep and bear arms, the right to a speedy trial, and to make sure that you can see the witnesses against you. I mean, that's the way it is. You have to be allowed to confront your witnesses. That's America. It's the foundational principles of this country. And I don't think that in many regards, you're right, we're not doing that right now. How many people were held as J6 prisoners? Do you know that number?
Well, there were 1,600 total people indicted and arrested for January 6th. About 250 of us on D-Day, or we'll call it maybe P-Day, Pardon Day. That's actually the new, we're going to have a celebration every single year, P-Day event. And on P-Day, about 250 of us emerged out of the gulag. But, I mean, that was all over the country.
And what happened to the guy? What happened to the guy that was there openly encouraging, going to the Capitol or that was never charged with anything? What was his name?
Ray Epps. I'm sure the USAID money has dried up that was paying for his multi-million-dollar ranch in Wyoming or wherever that they placed him after January 6th.
All right, so you got that going on. You've got the pipe bomb that was planted outside, where Kamala Harris was headed to the Diaz. They've got that all on video, and you're telling me, we can't identify this person.
They're saying that they're going to release the identity or something. There was some type of breaking news that they had regarding that.
And then you see these clowns. Then you see these clowns. What's it called? Patriot Front, where they're always dressed up in their masks. I mean, come on, seriously. Look, I know this.
Rolling around.
Yeah, I know this. When I go to an event, it could be a 3% event. It could be any of these events. I've been to some of them. I go, you cover them for what I do. I go and see it. You know whose faces are covered? None of them. No, nobody's ashamed of supporting the Constitution. Nobody's ashamed of their free speech. Nobody's ashamed for standing for what they believe in this country, except people like the Ku Klux Klan, which should be ashamed of themselves, or the Patriot Front, which is trying to hide their identity and should also be ashamed of themselves. There's a reason they hide, because they're either feds or they're shameful or both, right? I've never met a patriot in this country that hides.
Every Hamas rioter, every single BLMer that burnt down the buildings, there's a reason why the Jan 6ers were, picked off in wholesale, other than our Fourth Amendment rights being abridged, Bank of America handing over transactional data from every single, credit card that was in the audience that day and everything they did. But it's because we showed up unashamed. We showed up without the masks and without the hijabs and without the, the terroristic look, because we're patriots. And, when I stand and do my events, I was standing for Austin Metcalf a couple weeks ago. I was standing for Tina Peters in a protest recently. I was standing for Edward Kelly, U.S. Marine, that has been left behind. Steve, I'm not sure you're aware of this. There are Jan 6ers still behind bars. One of them in particular, U.S. Marine Edward Kelly. I'm actually going to connect him with you guys. Edward Kelly got basically caught up in the same style plot as Gretchen Whitmer's kidnapping farce. He's a father to a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. He has a biracial family, actually, and he is, honorably discharged, amazing American hero. He's facing life in prison off of some weaponized
What's the
FBI.
crime?
They got caught with a conspiracy. They're hitting with conspiracy. And
you know what conspiracy is? Just so people understand. Conspiracy is if they can't really convict you of anything else, they throw conspiracy in there. Well, he talked to somebody once, or he talked to a couple of people, so therefore there was a conspiracy. It's a catch-all when they don't actually have a case. That's what conspiracy often is.
Donald Trump's supposed to be dealing with that. I hear that that was the rumblings while we were in federal prison. Everybody was saying that, especially the other inmates there that were caught up in, conspiracy charges, 3-4 people down the line they never met, who somebody else committed some crime, but they originally were connected through a bunch of different contacts. The murmurings inside the federal prison were that conspiracy charges, that Donald Trump was going to basically reform the conspiracy federal charge because he himself got caught in an 18-person conspiracy in Georgia and January 6th conspiracy charges. And so we do want to see Donald Trump and obviously our, I don't know if we call them great lawmakers, maybe fake lawmakers, until they do something great.
Well, here's the thing. I want him to do something about this because I want the people that are behind bars, that just isn't right. They're there unfairly, need to be removed. And that's not just J6. There's a host of people that are in prison for reasons
the
they
ghost
shouldn't
gun,
be there.
Second Amendment people, abortion activists. You've got a whole host of American patriots other than Jan 6ers that the Biden regime started to attack vaccine deniers and people that were trying to get around the vaccine scam.
Yep.
People like that also got in prison for what's it called? Forgery and whatever not. And so there are political prisoners left in America, Steve. We're fighting every day to get them out. And in fact, my organization, Federal Watchdog, has slated just today. I finished building out the official 150 questionnaire form for the Jan 6ers because we're going to be filing a $150 billion lawsuit on the federal government for the wrongful incarceration, the torture, solitary confinement, pre-dawn raids on grandmothers. All this stuff comes with a financial compensation, every single thing. Even the fact the federal prosecutors were weaponized against us, perverted and twisted the law code. When the Donald Trump administration fired like 80% of the J6 prosecutors right when he came into office, that's an admission, from the U.S. government. These people were doing wrong. These people didn't deserve their job. These people abused their power. And in our system, that has a financial compensation to it. So we're encompassing all of the misconduct from the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the lack of nutrition, the years of solitary confinement, U.S. Marshals that were, they moved us around like animals. They carted me around 17 times. They would come pick me up 4 a.m, drop me off at an airport, chain my hands and feet together, fly me across the country, fly me back the other way, just to torture you in diesel therapy.
And what was the reason for that?
For our interviews, Steve. Because I was talking too much.
Well, there is that. I've been accused of that once or twice in my life as well, but I haven't been in jail over it yet. That's the sad thing. Look, you are probably going to get harassed more, especially if there's ever a changing of the guard at the White House. I hope there's, and what I mean by that is we come back with a far left administration like the Obama administration or Biden. I hope we never see that again in my lifetime, but it's always out there and it's always a danger. And the same people that sit there and bump their gums and scream about freedom and liberty and how Donald Trump's a tyrant and a fascist and they're going to attack our democracy and destroy the country. First of all, we live in a republic. I heard people say if Donald Trump was elected in 2016, he'd be the last president because that'd be the end of America. No, the end of America comes when leftists come in and throw people in jail like yourself without trial and leave them there to rot for years on end. That's when things are dangerous. When they say that hate speech is more important, you can have people, arrested for what they say, thought crimes. That's the end of the republic. Not what we do, but what they do. But they always project. They always say, hey, it's these guys are doing all these terrible things, when in reality, it's what they're doing that is dangerous. It's what they're doing that brings us close to 1984 and Brave New Day. And all of these things, these are the things that are dangerous to us. Not what we do. I believe in freedom. I believe in the freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. Even if I don't like it or it makes me mad or it makes me sad, it doesn't matter. You can say it. That's what the foundational principle of America is. Freedom of thought. That is the foundational principle. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution is the envy of the world. The whole world wishes they had that. I mean, look, again, back to what's happening in England, where they're throwing people in jail for posting on social media while saying, we're doing the right thing. No, you're not. You're destroying Western civilization, you clowns. And when you import all sorts of people from the third world into France and Germany and the Netherlands and everywhere else, you're destroying Western civilization. I mean, look at Canada. Oh. What an absolute travesty Canada has become. Jailing those truckers who are just saying, look, we don't like the COVID lockdowns. Throw them in jail. And when you throw them in jail, lock up their bank accounts so they can't defend themselves with an attorney. Make sure their money's locked up so they can't make their house payment. Make sure they get divorced and their kids leave them. Make sure that they suffer the ultimate destruction of their families. I mean, that Justin Trudeau's a horrible human being. Mark Carney is worse. Mark my words, Mark Carney is worse. He's a globalist from the World Economic Forum, a Davos devotee who is a citizen of 3 different countries. Can you imagine that? Your prime minister is a citizen
I did
of
not
Ireland,
know that.
the UK,
that
and
goes
Canada.
That goes along with their current population shift. I think 30 years ago, Canada was 95% natural-born citizens and those of long lineage in Canada.
Correct.
And nowadays, 45% of Canadians are either immigrants or first-generation Canadians.
Right,
But
here's how they did it.
From third world countries, from India. Basically, Canada is now India.
Yeah, and here's how they did it. They did it legally. Justin Trudeau brought in over 5 million immigrants legally, so you can't throw them out. They didn't have the invasion, the way that we had it. They did it systematically and just flooded the country with these folks. Yeah, and I was just going here to double check. Yeah, Ireland, the UK, and Canada. A citizen of all 3. He's apparently just renounced his British and Irish citizenship. And so what? There was a reason. If you were going to be, other than the first president of the United States or the first couple, you had to be born here. You have to be born in America to be the American president. You can't have citizenship in another country and be president of the United States. There's a reason for that. It's important for the sovereignty of this republic to have its leader to be somebody who was born here, raised here, and understands the values and the heritage of who we are, period.
Of course. And, it's one of the topics that we cover a lot here, Steve, on this program. And it's, there's a lot of influencers. I don't know if you've seen right-wing Twitter recently and how this mobilization of a nationalistic effort in America, calling out violent crime sprees in all different types of countries perpetrated by the immigrants. What are we laughing at, Steve? You got to let me in on
No, I get somebody's mocking me over here to give me a hard time. Anyhow, that's what happens when you have a studio in your house, Jake. I'll just tell you the little side story here. So last night I took the kids down to Ford Field where the Detroit Lions play football, and we watched AC/DC rip the house down. All right, I'm just going to tell you that. AC/DC's on tour. They ripped the house
That's good old-fashioned American fun.
That is. They might be a band from Scotland and Australia, but they're a good old American. We had a ball. It was absolutely good fun. And we took my kids down to my wife and I took them down to the Ford Field. So anyhow, there's the kid with an AC/DC shirt, just rocking out in the studio. There you go. That happens. It's after, you got to understand, Jake, it's after hours, normal business hours. You're right. I get up very early. I get up before 5. I'm on the air by 5:45, and then I'm on till 9 in the morning Eastern time. Then I'm on from 3 to 4 in the afternoon on America's Voice. So it's a busy place in here. And I've got Ivy and Anthony and Sarah over here, my daughter Madison, who's running around going to college and doing different things. And I have a 12-year-old son. It's a very busy place.
I'm so grateful Steve, that you're here, that, the journalism integrity that you bring to the table, that you share that with my audience. We've got the #2 show on X, actually. Just this is our 8th episode.
Really?
We've been charting at #2 on X since the first episode all the way to now. We got like about 15,000 people streaming live right now watching us. And Alex Jones's numbers are absolutely astronomical, but we have a lot of great partners we bring on. And Alex Jones's numbers are astronomical because take a look at this. I actually caught this. This is live picture from Elon Musk's house. Alex Jones has traded. He does the dishes and carpets twice a week in order to have an algorithm boost. And we're joking here, Steve. You're looking at this like it's legit.
Yeah,
Steve,
I'm just looking.
I know, because you have such an amazing platform, and it's it's a little disheartening sometimes when we're trying to, reach the same level of audience that these amazing journalists.
Look, if you get that feather duster out, dude, you're going to boost your numbers. I'm going to tell you right now.
Well, I've offered Elon Musk. I will do the other. Alex Jones has Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I will do Monday and Friday in order to have the same algorithm boost as InfoWars does. So
do you think that's part of it? Because just curious about your experience with social media here. Look, I think it's black magic half of the time. I mean, one day I'll have 1 million views on Twitter, right? The next day I'll have 50,000 for the whole day, and I'm doing the same things. I'm covering the same stories. I'm putting out some video, a little commentary here and there. I comment on other people's posts. I don't know what happens. There for a while, Facebook, I was picking up 1,000 new followers a day. Man, I was growing. All of a sudden it just stops. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It just stops. All of a sudden I go from, 1 million people a day looking at me to 100,000 or 200,000 on Facebook. I still get big, a lot of looks there, but it's like, I don't actually understand how it works. Is it live? Is this what I need to do every day? We're live on the program you've been on with me. That's always streaming, right?
Yep.
But it's just, and now we're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. We do everything we can, and it's growing. Don't get me wrong. It works, and the audience is growing, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't get it.
As far as I know, and this is, we'll give a little bit of secret sauce. Right now, the algorithm wants short clips with people's faces in it. They want topics that are currently trending. You could post a photo on X of your family, right? You guys all smiling, like, 72 likes. It's just not going to take that. But you say something that's trending in the last hour or two, you get in front of a camera and take a video of it with your own face and then put like a hot, like breaking title on it, stuff like that. That's what the algorithm's going to feed into. But it is also broken. And so we do need, I'm going to start this one. It's going to be called AA, Algorithms Anonymous, and it's for influencers to come together and those who have grievances. We're just going to come together once a week and just speak and let it out. My name is Jake Lang.
Just a bitch session.
And today, my algorithm completely shadow banned me.
It did?
They're going to say, hey, Jake, me too. I've been struggling. I say, I've had my 30-day chip. I haven't been blacklisted by the algorithm in 30 days.
My 30-day chip, yeah. We'll have our challenge, our coins, yeah. Have not been shadow banned in 60 days, yeah. I don't know. So here's what's crazy, just for, this sort of thing. Look, on Twitter, it was awful. I always had about 9,000 followers. I'd get to about 10,000, maybe just over. Bam, I'm back at 7,000. This went on for years. I'd get it, bam, every time. That's how. And then finally, Elon bought it, so we're up to what, 52, 54,000, whatever we are. And
your level of content, Steve, I say this completely objectively, and your journalism and the programs and just the depth of your career, you should be at that 1 to 1.5 million mark, like bare minimum.
No, I know.
And it's just
we're knocked down over and over again. Well, and I was going to say this on Facebook. They were supposed to lift all the penalties on Facebook, all the flags and so forth, right? A few weeks ago, it didn't happen. And I have one major, red flag. I got a red card or whatever they call it in soccer. Here's what my crime was. I reposted somebody else on Hunter Biden. And because it was about Hunter Biden, so therefore it violated the rules of nudity or something. I'm like, it's a blurred out picture of Hunter Biden on the laptop that everybody was running with. Mm-hmm. And I've got this flag that won't come off until, I think it comes off in June, right? It's on there for a year.
Well,
It's crazy.
one thing that I really have noticed is that the algorithm starts to give bonuses or whatever you want to call it to really clickbait, lascivious type of content and things that aren't really like hard hitting like regular news stories and stuff. There's only very few quote unquote journalists on X that can get out just a regular news piece to millions of people. Everybody else is
Right.
chasing some type of like ultra sensational style posting. We're going to show Steve's page right here. Let's pull it up on Main Street. Guys, let's go follow. Let's get the Golden Age Army. We've got 15,000 some odd people watching live right now. Let's go follow Steve Gruber Show. Steve Gruber Show. He's on Real America's Voice every day, 3 p.m. Eastern on the Pluto app if you want to watch him. He's also going live on his own platform, The Steve Gruber Show, on X early in the morning, and they pick up part of that as well for Real America's Voice. So you can catch him on Real America's Voice, streaming live on X, on Steve Gruber Show, on
That's
X,
right.
and on Pluto TV. So there's no excuse.
And YouTube.
And YouTube. Actually, Steve,
We just
that's
started
my
doing
biggest-
YouTube.
My biggest piece of advice right now, and I don't even have a presence on YouTube, but I talk with all the influencers. If you're trying
Yeah.
to make a living doing what we're doing outside of the network work and stuff like that, outside of getting paid by some gold company to do your show, which is great, but it's YouTube. YouTube is paying people a living wage for making content. So
They
focus
are.
on doing your shorts, doing
You
viral
look at
content,
people like
making the
Megyn
best
Kelly,
thumbnails. That's what
killing
you need.
it there.
Say it again.
Yeah. Megyn Kelly's like, for example, she's making more than anything she did at Fox News, I think. I
Really?
mean, she's just killing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be focusing on that a lot this upcoming year. I'm still trying to get my driver's licenses, pay off old bills from 4 years ago when I went to prison.
Yeah.
But hey, we're number 2 on X, and that's good enough for me. I'm so grateful to God for what he's done in my life. I'm grateful for you, Steve, for joining us. I don't want to keep you too long. Get back to
That's
your
all right.
beautiful family. We're so grateful to have you as a continued guest here. I'm going to have you on whenever you want to share in this
Cool.
awesomeness with us. This is the Golden Age. And just to let you know, Steve, the Golden Age is not just a show. It's a lifestyle that we're trying to embody and have the audience embody to push for success, excellence, to be the greatest man that God had envisioned you to be and woman. And so being on this show, you embody that with your high level integrity and journalism and whatnot. We need more young men to have posters of Steve Gruber on their wall and stuff instead of LeBron James and Kanye West, the homosexual, and all these other crazy people.
Yeah.
You are a man that I'd be proud
Or
to sit
Diddy.
down and to share a meal with, Steve, and one day very soon.
I appreciate you, Jake. I do very much. I'll come on anytime you want. You come back on my program. I'm actually going to just a little teaser here for you. I'm covering the White House for the last 10 days of May, roughly. So you'll see that on Real America's Voice. That'll be an education in and of itself. But thank you so much for having me at Steve Gruber Show. Go ahead and follow it. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Steve. Talk to you soon.